From the Denver Broncos Media Center, welcome to Broncos Country Tonight.
Welcome to Broncos Country Tonight as we break down the Broncos' loss to the LA Chargers 19-16. Quite a few frustrations, especially for the offense from about the second quarter on. We'll talk a little bit about that. But the defense, of course, continues to ball out. A lot of this game, in many ways, mirrored what the Broncos have been all season long. So I think the frustrations for a lot of fans right now is, okay, you had the 10 days off. You did the deep dive. Broncos looked great on script. But as soon as the script ended, the Broncos offense really had a tough time.
Yeah, it really did. And, you know, it's fascinating to me because there's an interesting stat. The Broncos haven't trailed at any point over the last two games in regulation. Just they've lost two games in a row in overtime. They've never trailed in. So that's, you know, I think something to kind of look at. Why is the offense stagnating? Why is it we get through the script and they can get some points and then it just falls apart after that? Is that on coaching for not having a coherent game plan and getting the plays in on time? Is that on players for not executing? Is it on both? And I think that's kind of where I come down on it. I went down, did a late, kind of deep dive on the All-22, and it kind of looks like it's a combination of both. It doesn't look like there's a coherent plan after the script. It's kind of like we'll figure it out. And me being personally familiar with that mantra and slogan can tell you that doesn't apply in every situation. So that's part of it. The other part of it is execution. The offensive line is not getting it done, period. You've got to get more protection. Part of that is the concepts that they're running take longer to develop. Part of that is Russ, not getting through progressions quickly. Part of it's the offensive line just not giving you enough time. And I recognize that when you're looking at the Chargers, maybe you didn't scout certain blitzes, you didn't see them, and they dialed them up because they saw something they could take advantage of here. But you have to know your protections as an offensive lineman and a quarterback. You've got to know these things. You've got to know the built-in hots. And if you don't have a built-in hot, you've got to call it. And so I think if we're doing the finger pointing and the blame game, there's plenty of that to go around. I'd rather look for solutions. And the solutions right now are going to be we've got to figure out a way to manufacture more protection. We're going to have to call stuff that doesn't take us long to develop. And we're going to have coherent strategies on what it is that we want to accomplish against different defenses each week. So there's a coherent strategy.
Yeah, your point specifically about when the Chargers brought extra pressure, brought the blitz, and it wasn't picked up. That's not really all on the offensive line. Oftentimes that's on Russ. He's got to move guys around. He's got to find his hot route. If they're bringing one more person that you have available to block, and especially on the fact that you have to include that they are been moving guys around. We had two different offensive tackles in there, right? Cam Fleming now shifted over to the left side after Calvin Anderson started. And then you had Billy Turner at right tackle. The interior of the offensive line has been banged up a little bit, but Quinn Miner's finally back, who had I actually thought had a really good game. So it's just one of those things, the communication. I think it comes down to everything you just said. It's just the communication, whether it is from Nathaniel Hackett, whether it is from Russ, whether it's the offensive line. There's something getting missed here consistently. So like I said, you watch this game, and they started out hot, right? The offense, 2 drives, 10 points. It looked great. They looked really good. From there, they really struggled just to get on track with the small things. And we've said that for a while about this offense. Hey, they're one of the best offenses in the game when it comes to explosive plays. They are one of the top teams in the league in explosive plays. They don't do the small stuff well.
They don't. And a lot of what the Chargers do, they play a lot of cover 4. And you'll notice that the Broncos tried to run Mills concept several times, but the problem with that is it's a longer developing concept. It's a concept that has one receiver going up and then trying to kind of sort of go vertical and then hit the post, and then underneath it you've got a square in that's built in, and then you've got to have something quick. You've got to have something hot that you can get rid of because that takes a while. And we saw on one play where Russ missed Greg Dulcich because he was still trying to read out Cortland and Judy going through the Mills concept.
But they only needed 3 and it was like 3rd and 2. It was a short.
You have to have situational awareness as a quarterback on that. So that's on Russ. A lot of the, for me, when you see that you've got 6 coming and you've got 5 guys to protect and one of them, one set of them is going to be in a combo block, then they're bringing one more than you're going to block, then you need to take that running back and let him know. Go get out to the slot. If they're bringing guys, you're going to be open. I'm just going to dump it to you. Force them out of what it is they're trying to do. And they just – for whatever reason, it feels like that they just don't understand that that's what they need to do. And you've got guys who have been playing football their whole lives. They should know these things.
These are pretty basic concepts, and that's what's so tough. And there is a certain amount of growing pains, and I think there's a certain amount of latitude that Broncos fans were willing to give. But there's a certain point where you're just doing the same things, expecting different results, and that's what it looks like. And maybe that is the untrained eye kind of thing, and Coach Hackett would have a different perspective on it. But the way it looked right there is, hey, the opening of the game looked really strong. But then the Broncos really just sort of struggled to figure out the basic concepts of blitz pickup, as well as getting to the hot routes, as well as really finding much success on the ground. Now, the one thing you did say, hey, Russell Wilson didn't turn the ball over in this game. He took 4 sacks, which you don't want to see. You don't want to see him take all his hits. And now, of course, he's got the hamstring injury. That could obviously complicate things, especially as we lead into the Jets game. But for what it is for this Broncos team, it's one of those, like, how do you find a balance to do the small things while still keeping the explosive plays? Because they already have that part down, and that's something previous Broncos offenses did not have.
Yeah, you do have that part down, and when you get the protection, all of a sudden this offense looks good. The problem right now, and I think it's fundamental, is that the Broncos are not getting the protection they need for Russ to do what Russ does, period. So if we start there and we say, okay, we're not getting what we need to execute all this, then we need to scrap anything that requires protection for that to happen, or we need to build in protection for it to be able to happen. It's just a simple if-then. So I think that's what the analysis needs to be this week. All right, we've made it through a third of the season. We're not getting the protection consistent enough for what it is that we want to do and need to do. How do we get that, or how do we find plays that will get the ball out quick enough that we're not taking negative plays that are impossible to overcome?
And by the way, one silver lining, if you will, with the offense. First of all, I love how they were spreading the ball around, getting the tight ends involved, and that was something we did ask for coming into the game. Also, the only 2 penalties the offense had were on that first drive. They basically cut all of that out. Now, they weren't on the field very much, so you could argue the other side of that. But right. I'm just saying, like, there weren't any other back-breaking penalties. They didn't have a lot of negative plays after that besides the sacks, which are significantly negative plays, and that does put you in a bad spot. But I would say that the rest of the offense, from a fundamental standpoint, something that they said they were focusing on, they didn't put themselves in bad situation with penalties on the offense. Now, the defensive side, we can get into that. We will. But the offensive side of the ball, that one kind of like, hey, that's what it needs to look like if you're going to succeed. When
it started off and they got the tour, I was just shaking my head, but they did manage to clean it up as the game went along, and that's a good thing.
And you had 2 different tackles in there, right? Again,
well, 3 different tackles. I mean, if
you easily could have had holds, right? I mean, and Quinn Miners coming back, he easily could have had any struggles, but they just didn't have, and a new running back in there, and Latavius Murray. Mm-hmm. So all sorts of things could have broken down where you'd have seen a hold or offsides or illegal downfield. I mean, all sorts of little things, ticky-tack kind of things, and that ref crew loved calling penalties, so it would have been very easy to do, but in this case, it was a positive for me.
Yeah, I thought the play calling wasn't very diverse off script. There was no play action on first down whatsoever. That should have been something you should have incorporated. They just felt like that they weren't putting their guys in the easiest situation possible, and then on the flip side of that, it felt like players weren't executing. The offensive line looked a shambles in that game. So, we've got a lot of work to do. Is it fixable? Yeah. My faith is starting to dwindle, though.
Yeah, and I think a lot of Broncos fans are feeling the same way. It was a tough game. Let's go to the defensive side of the ball. An NFL record was set last night. Justin Herbert, there was other records, but Justin Herbert, 57 passing attempts without a touchdown. That's the first time in NFL history that's ever happened. In fact, he 238 for 238 passing yards, no touchdowns, 1 interception, 2 sacks in the night. The Broncos got 31 pressures. They have 65 pressures in back-to-back weeks. They are the number 1 rated Pro Football Focus defense right now. And again, that's a double-edged sword, right? Because there's other people who say, well, you're wasting the defense. The Broncos offense is not complementing it. Mm-hmm. And once again, we know what that looks like here with Broncos country, because the defense has been good for the last several years where the offense has not played complementary. That is a significant problem, because that eventually leads to fracturing your locker room, so on and so forth, and then the season is basically lost. But the defense, yeah, they're missing one of their top corners. Damari Mathis had a tough night, but he ended up playing through it. There was a couple of nice plays in there, stuff to build on. I want to get your thoughts on that. Missing your top inside linebacker, missing one of your top pass rushers, and you're still getting that kind of production. That's good.
Yeah, the fact that they were able to overcome all those penalties, because they had a ton of them, and a lot of them were on Damari Mathis. One of them I felt was kind of ticky-tack. Most of them were pretty much earned. But we knew that coming in. We knew that going into that game, they're going to pick on Mathis. Nobody's going after Pat Surtain. That's just dumb. They're going to go after the rookie and Damari Mathis, and rightfully so, and they did.
First play.
Yeah, and so, we knew it was coming, and the Broncos had to know it was coming. I think what I would try to do is do some baited coverages here against the Jets, make it look like Mathis is out on an island, and then roll one of the safeties underneath real quick to try to get Jen some takeaways up. Because that's what's going to happen this week, too. They're going to continue to pick on him until he proves he can shut you down. So I would try to do some stuff like that. I would set up some baited coverages for this week. That's one solution you have. But, yeah, the Broncos had a ton of penalties, and they still managed to hold them to 16, regular time points and a field goal in overtime that was really the result of a muffed special teams play. They'd already shut them down.
Yep.
Over again. There was 95 plays. I think 5 players played on defense. That is an absurd number of plays. That's a game and a half. Typically it is 60 plays on defense. Now the Chargers do play at a faster pace on offense, so they get more plays in. But still, 60 plays is kind of the number. You get above that, and your defense is gassed. 95 plays is absolutely astronomical.
It is.
As a thing going forward, this defense has been brilliant, and it is being wasted on the offense right now.
But again, how long can that sustain? And can you continue to ride that even into the bye? Because at this point, I don't think the offense is going to have a dramatic turnaround. Brett Rippon or Russell Wilson in there at quarterback. There are some fundamental things going on here. Now, again, I know we've all been just waiting for the spark, right? The offensive spark when it all kind of comes together. And I really thought we were seeing a little bit of that early on against the Chargers. The way that they were able to, again, get a lot of people involved, scheme guys open. That Greg Dulcich touchdown was fantastic, right? I mean, coming right off the line, running wide open there. They did sort of a scissors concept, and Dulcich came running up. But again, it's sort of a tough deal because you're in a narrow margin situation again as the Broncos, even with what we believe is a better quarterback, maybe even better coaching. A muffed punt is the difference in the game. And you take the New York Jets coming up, who are red hot right now after coming off that win against Green Bay, and all their road wins, they've won all their road games. So you come into this one saying the Broncos' margins are still way too narrow for them to succeed if they're going to continue to have penalty problems or lack of concentration problems.
I would almost even say this is the tails side of the coin. If you look at the 2015 Super Bowl run, they were getting all the breaks, all the bounces, all that kind of stuff, and they're getting none of them right now. And this is the result of that. You had a great defense, an offense that isn't getting it done, and the margins are so thin. But they were getting bailed out by great plays at that point. They're not getting any of those right now. So I would say this is the tails side of that.
That's a fair point.
Is this stuff correctable? Sure, I do believe it is. Can this team win and still go to the playoffs? It's a tough road to hoe, but it is still possible. But you need a dramatic turnaround on offense. You need it quick. And I think a lot of people feel uninspired because they felt like the bye week would have been the opportunity to do that, and it just didn't get done except on the script. So, I understand people losing faith. I get it. I can tell you, I talked to 3 players last night. They're all extremely frustrated, and they feel like they're doing the right things. It's just not coming together. So, I don't know what to say at this point other than they just got to keep doing what they're doing and hope that all of a sudden it clicks. Yeah,
and I think that's a little bit of what, for the players' side of things, that's what they got to do. For the coaching side, there's a lot of work here.
There is.
And the coaches, and I know they are doing the work. It's not even a question of if they are. It's what kind of work they're doing and what solutions are they coming up with.
Right.
And in the meantime, we're seeing a little bit of change very quickly here. Melvin Gordon didn't play in the second half and into overtime. Albert Okwuegbunam was a healthy scratch in this game. We saw Calvin Anderson, who we thought would be maybe the left tackle for the remainder of the year. He got switched out there, I think, in the second quarter. So interesting sort of shifts there from the coaching staff. And again, we saw that from Vic Fangio in his first year when he did that on the defensive side of the ball, where he started shifting guys around right around this mark. It's interesting to see now from the coaching staff, Coach Hackett specifically, on why they're switching these guys.
You figure like you're going to get the best production out of whatever. I thought the move to Latavius Murray made sense. I would have sprinkled Melvin in, especially late, if you had the chance, especially in pass pro situations. But just to save a little wear and tear on Latavius. But they just went ahead and gave Latavius the rock. Excuse me. And that there's several reasons for that. And you may see those players get moved on from. You may see George Payton try to recoup some draft picks with those 3 players, see what he can get. One needed him healthy to be able to do that. That's speculation at this point, but I think it's informed speculation.
All right. We'll obviously have a short week and preview the Jets coming up. For Benjamin Allbright, I'm Ryan Edwards. Thanks for watching Broncos Country Tonight.
Denver's going to win! You can stand up and salute in Denver, and you got the world champions that live in your town.